Good evening and welcome to our third town hall meeting on the Dominguez Channel Odor Incident. I'm Kurjan Lee, a communications manager with the County of Los Angeles, and I'll be your moderator for the next hour as we discuss the latest developments on the odor incident affecting communities near the Dominguez Channel. We've assembled the top county and state officials working on this important issue to provide brief updates on the status of their efforts and to take questions from you, the public. After the agency updates, we'll shift to a question and answer session so we can directly address your questions and concerns. The questions presented tonight will be a combination of those received online prior to this event and those that are directly entered into the comment section of your social media channels. A quick note, this town hall is meant especially for the community members who are being affected by this incident. If you're a reporter or a member of the media, I ask that you please email your questions to our media inbox at pio@pw.lacounty.gov. That's pio@pw.lacounty.gov. Now let's hear a brief update from our three subject matter experts. First up is the Director of Los Angeles County Public Works, Mark Pastrella. Following Director Pastrella will be Dr. Jason Lowe, the Assistant Deputy for Air Monitoring at the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And then we'll wrap up these updates by hearing from Los Angeles County's Health Officer, Dr. Muntu Davis. Director Pastrella, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Pastrella, Director of Los Angeles County Public Works. I want to also thank our partner agencies that have been working around the clock to bring this incident to an end for the public. And again, thank you everyone for joining us and for your patience. The agencies that have been working with us include the County Public Health, County Council, our South Coast Air Quality Management District, the Army Corps of Engineers, California Fish and Wildlife, our Regional Water Quality Control Board, US EPA, our County Fire Hazmat, our County CEO, our sanitation districts of Los Angeles County, the Ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, the Water Resources Control Board, and the Southern California Coastal Water Resource Project, and both supervisory districts 2 and 4. So let's begin tonight with a quick recap of what's been going on within the community. On October 7th, Public Works was notified that a foul odor was emanating from the Dominguez Channel. And upon investigation, we discovered 90 acre-feet, or about 90 rose bowls full of 1 foot of water within an estuary with 0 dissolved oxygen. It basically means that the water was dead. The rapid growth of bacteria utilizing anaerobic digestion to process organic materials is the reason that the oxygen was down to 0. A byproduct of that process, anaerobic digestion, is hydrogen sulfide, a colorless gas known for its foul, rotten egg or sulfury smell, even at low concentrations. Now, when we tested the water column, we found it had been impacted to a point where, again, the dissolved oxygen concentration was as low as 0.1 milligrams per liter, mainly due to high chemical oxygen demand. We also found high levels of acetone at 9.6 milligrams per liter and sulfides at 80 milligrams per liter. These are products of anaerobic digestion. And they are, again, indicators that the water quality was very poor in this area. In response to these conditions, we mobilized our in-house experts along with other public agency experts and the private sector to investigate and develop solutions. So let's talk about those solutions. We began by spraying the channel with an odor neutralizer called Epolein. We're spraying about 13,000 gallons of this a day at 6 locations off bridges, using boats and even drones to access hard-to-reach areas. Now, I've heard some people refer to Epolein as a deodorizer, and it's not a deodorizer. Epolein is actually a compound that bonds to hydrogen sulfide and converts it to a non-odorous, non-toxic, biodegradable salt. The other solutions that we're using include aerating the channel using nanobubblers. There's some pictures on the board here of the system. Like I said earlier, this estuary is 0 dissolved oxygen, is in a very anaerobic state, which means that there's some pretty bad bacteria growing there, and that bacteria, again, is producing the smell that you're all smelling. The nanobubblers inject millions of tiny oxygen bubbles in the estuary, changing it from an anaerobic state, one that's using no oxygen, to a healthy aerobic state, which is a watershed that has a high level of oxygen in it. In turn, this oxygen is killing the bad bacteria that's causing the odor. Currently, we have a total of 10,700 gallons per minute running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have another 28,000 gallons per minute coming online over the next 2 weeks. We're also working with our agency partners on a plan to add ozone to the nanobubblers as well. Ozone is a powerful oxidant commonly used in wastewater treatment plants. The good news is that we've made tremendous progress in reducing the odors in the community. You can see here in the next slide the progress that we've made. On this slide, we're starting on the left-hand side. We started about October 14th, and we head to the right. It moves all the way out to today's measurements. There's been great consensus by our agency partners across the state and nationally that the tools that we're using are effective and are the right thing to do with respect to the conditions we have in the water. And again, the graph is suggesting that these experts are correct. It's got a clear downward trend in hydrogen sulfide readings. In fact, on the left-hand column, you'll see, or might not be able to read it, but it reads out at 7,000 parts per billion. This is this big spike you see on the left-hand side. And last night, all the way down, we had numbers that were as low as 2 parts per billion, and the highest high last night was 11 parts per billion. Additionally, another measure of water quality is the levels of acetone have also decreased from 9.6 milligrams per liter to 0.9 milligrams per liter. And for sulfides, we've reduced it from 80 milligrams per liter to 2 milligrams per liter. All this data tells us that we're doing the right thing and that we've figured out what is actually happening within the water that's causing the smell. This is the good news. We know what we're dealing with, we know the quantity of it, and we can now predict how long it will take before we're completely done with treating this water. It's taken some time for us to learn that, and I want to thank everyone for their patience as we grappled with an unpredictable, unprecedented event within this area. The other thing, of course, we're doing is keeping human health as a priority. The next slide will show you where we have been providing resources throughout the communities surrounding the Dominguez Channel. This assistance to residents has included relocating up to 3,000 families at local hotels, distributing over 16,100 portable air filters, and assisted over 2,500 residents at the Carson pop-up site and assisted another 480 residents at the Wilmington pop-up site. We've responded to over 8,200 calls. All this tells me is that all of you have been impacted. Those of you who live in this area have been impacted in a tremendous way. And again, I want to thank you for your patience as we work through and create these solutions. As I've said, addressing human health continues to be our top priority. Recovery also includes restoring the ecology of the community to pre-disaster conditions. This includes restoring the estuary. Now, this process will involve community input and could take upwards of 1 to 2 years to get the estuary back to its original growth. But first, we need to get rid of the odor, and we're going to take care of that first. Again, I want to thank everyone affected by this for their continued patience. The unpredictability, again, the scale and the persistence of the incident has been unlike anything I've seen. However, I can assure you that we are headed in the right direction. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Jason Lowe, Assistant Deputy Executive Officer at the South Coast Air Quality Management District. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Director Pastrella. As mentioned, I'm Jason Lowe from South Coast AQMD, and if I can get the slides up, that would be great. While we wait for the slides, I also echo Director Pastrella's appreciation for your time and your patience as we evaluate the situation and work together as a interagency force to address this odor issue. So I just want to mention that South Coast AQMD continues to use all available resources to respond to this odor event, working with our partners. We have received and responded to more than 4,300 odor complaints since October 3rd, and the majority of them have been in Carson. The public can continue to report odors to South Coast AQMD at 1-800-CUT-SMOG or 1-800-288-7664. We also continue our air monitoring efforts in the communities near the Dominguez Channel in coordination with Public Works, LA County Fire, Health and Hazmat, LA County Department of Public Health, and the other agencies. Next slide, please. Having an existing network of air monitoring stations measuring hydrogen sulfide and other pollutants such as gaseous air toxics and reporting the levels of these pollutants in our near real-time at our website at www.akmd, and the exact link is shown on this slide. But we do have a lot of these air monitoring stations looking for these different pollutants and continuously measuring 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In addition, in response to the odor incident, we deployed a new air monitor much closer to the area that was suspected to be the highest emission source of hydrogen sulfide in the area, which is near 213th Street and Chico. Overall, we continue to see a downward trend, as Director Pastrella showed, at all of our monitors. Next slide, please. So this shows the time series of the community monitors since the beginning of the incident. And we do see that at the beginning parts, we did see elevated levels in the hundreds of parts per billion. And this is not the one including the one that's right next to the major emission source. And as of today, we have seen the hydrogen sulfide levels at these community monitors to below 30 parts per billion for over a week. If you go ahead to the next slide, please. And then concentrations at these sites are headed towards numbers that are more typical of what we would consider background levels generally observed in these areas on a normal day. And to kind of give you some of that reference, we evaluated the levels that were observed in October 2020 through October 2021. And 95% of these readings range between 0 and 2.5 parts per billion, but individual readings were as high as 245 parts per billion. But at least gives an idea of where the range is for before the odor incident. At our 213th and Chico monitor next to the channel also has been showing improvement in the hydrogen sulfide levels. If you can show the next slide, please. This monitor is where we recorded the incident high reading of 7,000 parts per billion. And this is over 200 times the California nuisance standard for 30 parts per billion. Next slide, please. And this shows the more recent levels of the last week. And we're seeing numbers that are at least 90% lower than those high values of 7,000 parts per billion. And we're near that 30 parts per billion nuisance standard. The hydrogen sulfide levels at this monitor continue to trend downward, with the majority of the levels below the state standard. For example, in the last few days, there was only one exception that was on November 8th at 9 p.m., where the hourly average was recorded a little over 37 parts per billion. We also deployed our mobile monitor this last week throughout the areas of Carson through Long Beach to compare current hydrogen sulfide levels to what we saw at the start of the incident during the same time period. Can you show the next slide, please? So these two maps, the one on the left shows the first mobile monitoring effort that was conducted in mid-October. The map on the right shows the mobile measurements that were conducted just this last weekend. What you see in the areas highlighted in kind of the green and blue areas are areas where our mobile monitoring in October saw values, instantaneous values of hydrogen sulfide in the thousands of parts per billion. When returning to some of these same locations, throughout this last weekend, the highest level that we saw was 58 parts per billion through the entire route. And again, these are instantaneous values, but it was a good sign to see throughout the mobile monitoring area, which covers quite a distance of communities nearby, as well as farther away from the kind of epicenter, as it's described, of the hydrogen sulfide emissions were much lower. And then, as always, data can change or be impacted by many factors. So we continue to keep an eye on the data, and which includes, of course, weather, wind direction, and any other factors that can impact the hydrogen sulfide levels and the odors affecting the residents. We do want to acknowledge that while hydrogen sulfide levels are slowly on a steady decline, this does not mean that the odors have stopped completely. As the human nose is a very sensitive instrument to essentially detect these odors, and can be impacted even at these very low levels. South Coast AQMD continues to do its due diligence to evaluate all potential sources within our jurisdiction that could be a cause or maybe impacting the odor event, and the investigation remains ongoing. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Montu Davis, Los Angeles County Health Officer with the Department of Public Health. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking some time to get an update here. And if we can bring up the slides, I'll go ahead and get started as well. I do want to thank my colleagues on the call in the town hall tonight, Director Pastrella, for all of the work that he and his staff have been doing to both understand what is happening with the channel, as well as to take steps to address the issue of both the conditions of the channel as well as the hydrogen sulfide that had been coming off the channel. And Dr. Lowe, in terms of South Coast AQMD, for all of their work, continuing to do the monitoring, doing some additional steps, putting in a temporary monitor that wasn't there before in order to help us better understand and assess the situation. And again, thanks everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, the air quality in relationship to hydrogen sulfide levels has improved significantly. And as a reminder, as Dr. Lowe mentioned, hydrogen sulfide, it is a colorless gas with a strong odor of rotten eggs. And the current ambient air quality standard for hydrogen sulfide is 30 parts per billion for a 1-hour average exposure, which was adopted by the California Air Resources Board for the purposes of odor control. Given the unique nature of this incident, we've been tracking the average 1-hour readings and looking for consistency in the hydrogen sulfide levels being at or below 10 parts per billion, well below the California air quality standard, for 7 days or more, in terms of consecutive days or more, to have a little more confidence just in terms of the reductions in hydrogen sulfide in the air, that they are, being controlled. We also look to South Coast Air Quality Management District to let us know if there are any sources other than the Dominguez Channel causing elevated levels. As has been reported, these 1-hour average H2S levels in the surrounding communities have continued to decrease. Reported 1-hour average levels of H2S have been at or below 10 parts per billion, which is, again, substantially below the 1-hour standard for H2S. For at least 8 consecutive days for all South Coast Air Quality Management community air monitors, except for the one at 213 in Chico in Carson, which has continued to decrease as well. Just to give you an example, from November 6th through November 8th, the reported readings from the 213 in Chico monitor, the reported 1-hour average levels have been between 2.2 and 37.3 parts per billion. Just to give you a sense of that range, 58% of those reported levels were at or below 10 parts per billion, and 8% were from 30 to 37.3 parts per billion. The day before that, the numbers that were at or below 10 parts per billion was 55%. So things are improving. And this information can be viewed on South Coast AQMD's air monitoring page, which can be found on their website for the Dominguez Channel odor incident. Now, with the decreases that have been reported in hydrogen sulfide levels in the air, residents who have temporarily relocated should begin to take steps now to prepare for returning home by taking the following steps. First, go back and check inside your home for foul odors. Before returning home to stay, go home and check for foul odors inside. Now, spoiled food and trash with food can also cause foul odors inside, so make sure any food or drink products that smell bad or have signs of spoilage are put in an outdoor trash can with a lid. And remember, when in doubt, just throw it out. Second, air out your home or residence if needed. And if the odors are inside are greater than the odors outside, if there are odors outside at all, open your windows and doors for at least 2 hours to flush out the air in your home and close the doors and windows afterwards. If you want to put the slides up, you can go ahead and put it up starting at number 4. So the next thing to do is to really, make sure, if you haven't done so already, take steps to improve the air quality inside your home before returning home. And that means, consider increasing the airflow inside the home for a while to improve the air quality in your home before returning. And for those with a central HVAC system, if you haven't already done so, replace the HVAC filter with one that is the appropriate size for your system and is designated as HEPA or MERV rated with activated charcoal. Residents should run the system with the windows and doors closed for at least 30 minutes before returning. And if you don't wish to cool or heat your house indoors, you can place the HVAC settings on fan only, and it'll operate without activating the heating or cooling. And for those without a central HVAC system, consider using certified portable air filters with HEPA filters with activated carbon or charcoal, also to improve the air quality, especially if you don't have a central HVAC system. And again, running that portable air purifier for at least a couple of hours before returning home would be helpful. And as a reminder, you can still get reimbursed for central HVAC HEPA filters with activated carbon. You can obtain or get reimbursement for portable HEPA air purifiers with activated carbon, and get reimbursement for temporary location costs from the county reimbursement program or by calling 211. And finally, pay attention to your health when and if odors are present. If you have any symptoms that feel life-threatening, seek immediate medical care. If your symptoms are persistent, worrisome, or worsening, seek medical care and relocate to another area where odors are not present. In most cases, again, contact with hydrogen sulfide in the air. Your symptoms are usually related to how strong the odors are. Hydrogen sulfide gas is an irritant, and so your body will respond to that odor depending on the strength of it. Contact with the hydrogen sulfide gas may cause symptoms, as you all know, headaches, sometimes accompanied by dizziness, irritation of the eyes, nose, throat, and lungs, which can be accompanied by tearing up or coughing, nausea, and abdominal discomfort, which in some people may also lead to vomiting. We don't expect at the levels that we're seeing now that there should be much of that. Again, these levels, as has been mentioned, are coming down closer towards background levels that were seen before this incident started. You can go to the next slide. You also, should pay attention to, pets in terms of monitoring them for symptoms. Again, keep pets indoors if odors are present. And if you notice any of the following symptoms, such as difficulty breathing, vomiting, they're moving a lot slower than normal, or nausea, then call the veterinarian and make sure they get checked out as well. Now, again, as we've looked at this incident and watched levels continue to come down, we still don't expect to see any long-term irreversible health impacts. We do expect that what we'll see are, and what you may experience, are transient, short-term, and reversible. Again, meaning that the symptoms are expected to go away when you leave the area, or when the odors decrease or are no longer present. With our state and federal advisors, we routinely consider and reassess the levels reported and for how long they're reported, the risk to you in terms of short-term and long-term symptoms, and the recommendations made to reduce your exposure and prevent symptoms due to the levels of hydrogen sulfide gas in the air. You can go to the next slide, please. You can go to the next slide as well. Here's the information just in terms of looking at the reimbursement program. Again, I encourage you to review the terms of the program. Also review the reimbursement rates for the air purifiers, air filters, and relocation costs. And all the information is there, and you can also call 211 again for assistance. Next slide, please. If you go back, or once you relocate, or if you're in your home and you still feel like things aren't better and you're still having symptoms and you believe they're due to odors, you can contact us in terms of public health. Our community public health community line, which is listed here, is still available and is checked regularly every hour, and is available from the hours of 7 to 10 p.m. That number is 626-430-9821. Leave a message, let us know your contact information, and your call will be returned. Next slide, please. As Dr. Lowe mentioned, you can expect potentially that you may still experience odors. It's important to note that the odors may come and go even if the levels of hydrogen sulfide in the air are below the California ambient standard of 30 parts per billion. Again, some people can smell hydrogen sulfide in the air at levels as low as 0.4. Again, that's 0.4 parts per billion. Again, hydrogen sulfide gas occurs both naturally and from human-made processes, and some hydrogen sulfide is always present in the air, again, background levels. Hydrogen sulfide is associated with municipal sewers, as we see here, sewage treatment plants, decomposing waste, gas and oil drilling operations, farms with manure storage or livestock confinement, and landfills, among others. People, again, should continue to report odors. You can go to the next slide. To AQMD, again, 1-800-CUT-SMOG or 1-800-288-7664. Or you can go online through their online system and put a complaint there. They continue to monitor continuous real-time measurements of hydrogen sulfide, VOCs or volatile compounds, and other air pollutants 24 hours a day. Community members can also sign up on their website to receive automatic email notifications if air pollution levels reach elevated levels. And thank you. And with that, I now believe we will start taking questions.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, and all of our panelists. We're going to get into our question and answer, as you mentioned. For our panelists, I'm going to read the question aloud and then direct to you as appropriate. Please be sure your video is on and that you unmute your mic before you respond. I do want to address, we had some Facebook and YouTube technical difficulties. So Director Pastrella, I'm going to start with you. And if you wouldn't mind, just give us a quick recap of the use of the neutralizer. What is the product and what is its use, or what's the intended use?
That effect. Let me see. Check my sound. You can hear me, okay?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. So what we're using, we began spraying the channel with an odor neutralizer called Epolean, EPOLEAN. We're spraying about 13,000 gallons of this a day at 6 locations off of bridges using boats and drones to access hard to reach areas. Epolean is not a deodorizer. I've heard some people call it that. Epolean rather is a compound that bonds to hydrogen sulfide at the surface as the hydrogen sulfide attempts to leave the water surface, and it converts it to a non-odorous, non-toxic, biodegradable salt. Does that answer your question, Kurjan?
Yeah, thank you, Director. We had some technical difficulties. I think your audio was a little bit muffled or or scrambled. So I just wanted to make sure that our viewers on Facebook and YouTube were able to hear that. The next question is for you, and it's a question that we've gotten through numerous sources, through Facebook, certainly through our meeting tonight and just before our meeting. So the question is that there is a message coming out to residents who've been relocated that they are going to be asked to leave their hotel rooms tonight. Is there more information about those residents who've been relocated and are in hotels? It may be, maybe they were placed by the city of Carson. And what message do you have for them tonight?
Yeah, I understand that the city of Carson may have sent out an alert saying to people that they may be not be able to stay in their hotels. And we were just made aware that this happened. We just received the notice. Now we're in the process right at the moment of reaching out to those residents to relocate them. We also know, and this is to move them to the county program. The city of Carson has also graciously had a program to relocate people that they've been utilizing. The county would be reaching out to take care of those residents that are potentially not able to stay in this location. So please stay alert for messages to you, and you will be given numbers to call. For someone who's just hearing this now and hasn't gotten an update, they can certainly call our 211 number for information about their relocation issues. We also know that given the low readings, however, we discussed tonight that some of these residents may want to return to their homes. For those residents that do decide perhaps to go to home, air purifiers are available for all of you at Victoria Park, and we'll reimburse for HEPA-related filters with activated carbon for your HVAC units. This is part of our reimbursement program that's ongoing. And again, I think, yes, Dr. Davis talked about this, is that one of the things that folks that have been out of their homes should consider is receiving a mobile filter from LA County as a part of the remediation for your house upon your return.
Thanks, Director. And another question for you. It's been over 4 weeks, about a month since this incident started. Why is it taking so long to remediate the odor?
The damage that has been done to the estuary is very significant. As I said earlier, 90 acre feet of water is a tremendous amount of water. Again, I'll use the analogy in case you didn't hear it, is that's about 90 football fields filled up with one foot of water. So it's quite a quantity of water. It's actually, and vegetation and other chemicals that we found in the water that are coming together to create an interesting chemical compound, as I said, that is creating anaerobic digestion in the waterway. The water is actually trapped in the location. It can't be washed out without a significant rainstorm, and the tidal influence is keeping it from actually discharging into the harbor and therefore being diluted. So we have a fairly highly concentrated brew, if you will, of chemicals that's making up what we would essentially call industrial waste or industrial sewage. And what we're doing is using industrial sewage and sanitation methods to treat this body of water. So it is a slow process, and we're being measured in the way we treat it because we don't want to do more damage, obviously, by introducing chemicals that could create more of a hazard for humans, or on the other hand, causing potential further damage to the native habitat or to the harbor itself. So we're being measured in it. Once we got, an awareness of what we had in the channel, which was a highly unlikely situation, we made a strong move to get it treated. And I think, as you saw tonight, the treatment has been fairly effective. Although I will say, I totally empathize with everyone that it is much too long to have to deal with that level of hydrogen sulfide gas within your community.
Thank you, Director. Question for Public Health, Dr. Davis. What's being done to help the senior citizen population? How are they being reached? Many don't have technology or an ability to obtain these resources online. How are we reaching out to them during this time?
Well, fortunately, as we've started this system, we've had phone numbers for people to call, not technology dependent in that regard. And Public Works has had 211 in place to try to help those who need assistance, in terms of reimbursement, et cetera. But we've also been in the community. We have gone to places of people who have contacted Public Works. Public Works has communicated to us, this person, is not able to come out and, get a portable filter. Can you go over to their house and deliver it? And we've done that. We've also checked in with all of our skilled nursing facilities in the area to see if there have been any issues there and to try to provide some guidance to them as well. We've also just been in the community at the community centers at the park, Victoria Park as well, for people who can get out and come and go and talk to us. And we've also had our phone number to call for advice and to get information on their situation and what's happening. So we've been doing all that we can, both on the ground and through the phone system and through partnership with Public Works to make sure that we get to the seniors who need help.
Question for Director Pastrella. Is there any way you can flush this contaminated water in the channel into the ocean using ocean water during high tide?
It's a very good question. It's one of the first things we considered. First, flushing using a man-made freshwater flow from above. So we actually went to all the known man-made water sources, reservoirs, and even looked at interconnectivity to like the LA River or San Gabriel rivers to see if we could create a flow similar to the flow that you may have seen during our small rain event, something like 2,000 CFS flowing down. This is a tremendous amount of water, and that small rain event did have a fairly significant effect. It didn't push or flush the water out, but it treated it, if you will. It actually introduced a tremendous amount of dissolved oxygen. That's why the treatment and that sort of respite we got lasted a short period of time. The other idea that you brought up was, so on the man-made flow, we could not find any interconnectivity or enough water without jeopardizing other properties' fire protection to flush it with fresh water. So we went to look at the harbor Now we sit way back up in the harbor here. It's not like you have waves there. Or if you go down to the beach and you see like the tide comes in, there's a large 6-foot differential, for instance, in tide. In fact, the tide it is tidal driven. What tide does is it moves molecules up and down. It doesn't actually move water. Like for instance, there's not actually waves. So what happens is the interspersed fresh water and salt water, it does mix through like a colloidal process, but it's not a flushing process. It doesn't grab the water and pull it back out with it. It actually acts as a barrier in a way from this water being pulled out. Not that there isn't some intermixing at the face, but it's not enough to actually. We need essentially like a wave action, like almost like a huge shadow wave action. So we also thought like, well, what if you actually put a man-made something to push the water from the ocean in, and had worked with the harbor and worked with the Port of Long Beach to look at like dredging and other things that could work with that. And each of those solutions we came up with had problems with one feasibility, the actual feasibility to put the dredge in there. Two, some of the risks that were associated with that discharge weren't acceptable. And so we that was one of the original thoughts and solutions we were coming, but we have not. We've abandoned that because for the lack of water, the lack of rainfall, and the inability to actually move with the ocean. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Director. And a follow-up question for you. What is the preventative plan for Public Works to stop this or prevent this from happening in the future?
One of the things we really have to be careful about, and I want all the citizens to listen closely to this, is that we don't discharge anything other than stormwater into our channels. There's two systems in LA County to drain the county. One system drains our stormwater, and the other one takes our sewage, including industrial sewage from businesses and from restaurants and waste that comes off of manufacturing plants. That all goes into the sewer system. It's a smaller system, it's a closed system, and it goes to our county sanitation district for treatment. The second one is the county flood control system, and this is where Dominguez Channel comes in. The Dominguez Channel is not a sewer. It's not supposed to be taking anything other than stormwater. Now, stormwater does contain pollutants of concern, and we have a whole system already in place throughout the county to capture those pollutants before they enter in the system. Unfortunately, it looks like we've got a large discharge of some sort into the system. And so my answer to your question is, one, continue to educate people not to discharge this, enforce the laws that are in place so that we don't have illicit discharge, monitoring the system, a higher level of monitoring of our system so we get an earlier warning that we are getting at these hydrogen sulfide levels, and having this solution on hand, having the bubbling system and having the epaulein in place in the event that for some reason we do have another discharge like this. But I want the community to know, I don't expect this incident to reoccur regularly or with some reoccurrence. I do expect that you will smell hydrogen sulfide because of part of the natural decay where there isn't any introduction or of anything other than the natural water system there. The plants will die off in the estuary, and they will cause a 1 to 2 day typically hydrogen sulfide die-off or off-gassing. So you may, if you live in this area, you may have smelt the smell before, but if you're like me, it only lasted 1 or 2 days and it dissipated. And that's what we do expect in the future. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Director. And a question for Dr. Lowe. Why is the smell so inconsistent? Some days it smells and others it doesn't. And what's the reason behind this?
So there's a lot of factors that affect the concentrations of hydrogen sulfide. In the data, some of the graphs that I showed earlier, you would see a little bit of trend in terms of some of the patterns of hydrogen sulfide levels would be higher during the nighttime, or now we're seeing it kind of shift more towards the early evening. So there's a lot of factors that affect I guess the levels of hydrogen sulfide, part of it being the temperature, part of it being some of the activity that we'd be seeing, as Dr. Pastrella had mentioned in terms of their activities. So there's a lot of factors that go into the levels that may be observed and smelled by the people who are nearby the channel.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. And a question for Dr. Davis. What are the long or short-term health effects from exposure to the gas?
So based on what we've been seeing in terms of the level, we do not expect long-term irreversible health impacts from this. There are some studies that have shown, at really high levels, say a person that's high enough that a person passes out, that if they recover from that, then they could have, some issues with memory loss and other things. But we've gotten nowhere near those levels in terms of, what would be seen in terms of causing that. And when I say those levels, I mean way above, like 100 parts per million or 100,000 parts per billion. Again, our peak, and that was a one-time peak, was near 7,000, but in general, we've been much lower than that. So we don't expect at this point, again, irreversible long-term health impacts. But again, we'll continue to monitor the situation and work with our state partners to reassess as we continue to watch these levels go down as we move forward. Before you switch, I do want to add something to an earlier answer. In terms of seniors, one of the things that we also did is we have a list of people who are at risk and have electrically dependent durable medical equipment at home, or who are receiving facility-based dialysis or home oxygen, receive home health care, or on at-home hospice. And so we actually went door to door to check in with all of those folks that we're aware of in order to make sure they had the information about what was happening and knew what to do and what to watch out for as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's a two-part question for Director Pastrella. Does Public Works or the county have a plan to rehabilitate the waterway? And is it true that the channel falls under the jurisdiction of multiple agencies, the city, the state, and federal oversight?
Okay. The first question, so recovery, the different parts of an incident, we're right now in response mode, but in the recovery, we intend to prepare a community-wide, community-inclusive restoration project related to the channel. And we will be looking at the conditions that existed prior to the incident. This will be looking at the water quality, looking at the condition of the channel, the vegetation that was there, looking to improve the water quality to a level at which it existed prior to incident, and also take the opportunity to engage community in the Dominguez Channel and its surrounding amenities. And whether it's time for us to take a look at how the channel not only serves from a flood protection standpoint, but potentially as an amenity, a community benefit amenity, allowing access along the channel, safe access along the channel, and other things that we've done in the up and along this watershed actually already, but to bring it down to this area. We were looking to coordinate with not only the community, the business community, the residential community, but also the business community in this area, as they benefit so largely from the channel's main purpose, which is flood protection. Yeah, the jurisdiction is complicated here, but one thing is, I can give you the picture for you. Los Angeles County Flood Control District owns and operates this channel in this area. Regulatory jurisdiction is with the state of California, the State Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the state Cal EPA, because it is designated as the water of the U.S., and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who also have regulatory authority over this area. Again, I've been mentioned earlier, we've been working with all of those regulators. They've been looking closely at the solutions that we've been proposing, and they've all endorsed the approach that we're taking as protective to human health as well as to the environment.
Thank you, Director. A question for public health. Why has the situation been called a nuisance for so long when there are people who have been complaining about their health?
Yeah, it's, it got termed a nuisance. It's basically a legal term. We weren't at levels that would be an imminent danger to health. But if you actually look at the letter in terms of our public health directive to Public Works, we note that it was causing symptoms in people and that it definitely was widespread and pervasive enough to impact health. So please don't take that word to mean that this wasn't serious enough that it caused some, again, short-term health impacts. It was, and that's one of the reasons why we gave that public health directive to do what's needed in order to lower the levels that were being seen and what were impacting the community.
And a follow-up question for you, Dr. Davis. Have residents that were relocated been given information on what to do when they return home? And are there residents who are actually going back to their homes?
We'd have to talk with Public Works in the city of Carson just in terms of the numbers to see what's changed in terms of people who did temporarily relocate. However, we have the information related to returning home, and we have a specific tip sheet for that available on the county emergency website. We also will have our staff at the visitor centers who can pass that out as well. They can, if they relocated or know others who have, they can share that information. We'll work with the city of Carson to make sure it gets out to those folks. And also, we're working with Public Works to make sure that we have some communication to people who have relocated so they're aware that those tips have been put out there as also. So we're working through multiple mechanisms to try to get it to people. But if you know somebody who's relocated and you're listening to this, please find that information on our website or on the county's emergency website for this incident and share it with them as well.
Okay, and Director Pastrella, there's a number of investigations or inspections in the field on this issue, air quality, water quality. When will that information be made public, or is it public now, and where can the public go to find it?
So work within the channel itself, water quality data that we're taking for solution sets is available. It's available public information, and we can begin to post it if we haven't already, post some of that information already. But I want the public to be aware that there is some of the information investigations that are occurring that are tied to potential litigation and cannot be shared with the public at this time.
Thank you, Director. And for South Coast Air Quality Management District, Dr. Lowe, what is the system that's in place to monitor the levels of, to monitor the air quality levels and to notify residents?
Thank you for the question. So we have, as part of our existing network, and that's a network that is designed for near the communities and the refineries, we have multiple monitors measuring multiple pollutants, including hydrogen sulfide. And within there are alert mechanisms to, if there are levels of these pollutants that reach a specific threshold, and usually it's a health-based threshold for some of those carcinogenic compounds like benzene or toluene or ethylene. And then also for hydrogen sulfide reaching that 30 parts per billion nuisance standard, then an alert can go out if they sign up for this alert, and they can also sign up through to get these alerts via EML if they go to our website with the air monitoring link that was provided earlier to get those notifications.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. And again, back to Director Pastrella. We did have some audio issues, and it looks like we're getting some questions about the message that came from the city of Carson. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing again, what do you have to say to the residents who were notified earlier today about being removed or being asked to leave their hotels tonight?
Okay, again, for those residents that did not get this information, it's breaking information for us as well. We understand that the city of Carson has sent out an alert saying that some of you may not be able to stay in your hotels. The county is currently working right now as I speak to correct that situation so you can remain in those hotels. We want you we are also attempting to reach out to you. If you are one of these residents who have been relocated and getting that information, you certainly can call our 211 line to get information from the county. What we're proposing to do is have those residents move to the county's relocation program so that we can consistently serve you and your needs. We also want to remind everybody that, as Dr. Davis has noted, as well as Mr. Lowe, is that the air quality in many of the residents is at a place that you may want to consider returning home. It's up to you. Upon your return to home, we certainly want you to be safe in doing that. And there has been a tip sheet created, as Dr. Davis mentioned that you want to get a hold of at our emergency site that walks you through some of the steps. One of the things that we want residents that have relocated and are returning home to do is to come and pick up a filter from us, a mobile filter from us at the Victoria Park location. Believing that that would be a good thing for you to have within your home if you had to relocate. And so again, please call 211 today if you're concerned about any of the remediation being ended. Our reimbursement program is still active. It is not closed off. We are still relocating people when they make us aware of the situation. We are still providing filters, both mobile and HEPA filters for your HVAC. If you're interested in that, and again, you can get information on this by dialing 211.
And Director, another question for you. Would Public Works in the county be able to do more if the governor declared a state of emergency?
We're working with the governor's office for them to consider a state of emergency. What we would be seeking from the state of California is financial aid as well as regulatory aid in our operations. And so it would be helpful if the state did declare that, because it would open up some resources to the flood control district and to the community that we're currently expending locally.
Thank you. And a question for Dr. Lowe. How often during the evening, during the night, is air quality monitored? And is AQMD on location during the night?
So thank you for the question. So a lot of our community monitors are ongoing 24/7 air monitoring and collecting data every 5 minutes, and it's reporting both 5-minute and hourly values for certain pollutants. With regards to presence on site, we do have our inspector team, which has been out there during the day and during the night to be able to respond to complaints using our 1-800-CUT-SMOG number. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Lowe. And a quick time check. It's 6:22. We were scheduled to go to 6:30, but we do have quite a few more questions. I want to check with the panelists and make sure that we're okay to go an additional 10 minutes past that 6:30. Is everyone okay with that? I'm getting thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see. Here's a question for Dr. Davis. Why are county officials and news articles encouraging the use of HEPA filters in the home to alleviate the odor and the symptoms if it's a gas and gas can't be filtered by HEPA filters?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So a couple things with that. So one, lots of things can impact air quality inside the home, and we've actually seen, even with using just an air conditioner without even changing out the filter, we've documented with our partners who do readings indoors as well, that the levels can decrease with that. And so the HEPA filter with the activated carbon is to try to take out all of the things in the air that can be filtered, through that, in order to improve indoor air quality and take out, some of the odors that may also be in the air. So it really is something to try to help, but ultimately, if things are not improving in the home and the levels are, as high as they were, and people were still having symptoms, the best thing to do is at that time is to, get out of the area in terms of not being exposed to that odor. If you think about it, even when you're filtering inside, if things are really strong outside, there's always that chance. We're in a much different place at the moment in terms of where the levels are. They're not at the levels that we saw before. But in general, we have documented that things have improved even with the filters that were recommended.
Thank you. And a question for Dr. Lowe. Considering that there is a landfill and refineries in close proximity to the channel and the location where the smell is most intense, have these areas been checked within the last 30 days to determine if they could be a source or contributing to the gas that's in the air?
So in response to the question in terms of have these different potential sources, as mentioned earlier, we have checked all potential sources. That does mean we've been in communication with the refineries, We've on the monitoring team have been looking at the air monitoring data that's at the fence line to see if there's any potential emissions that would be sourced from the refineries. So I would say it's not limited to landfills and refineries, but other sources as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Pastrella, a question about reimbursement. When will reimbursement payments start being issued? And will additional staff, I assume that's county staff, be hired to expedite the processing of reimbursements?
The process for reimbursement begins with your application for mitigation, and then upon receipt of your a complete application, we are targeting 21 days for reimbursement of that that payment, or your expenditure, excuse me. We have enough staff on board. We've actually moved county disaster service workers into place to help with the process, and we feel that we can meet that 21-day target for the majority of our residents that have been impacted, or for all of them. The process is involved a legal process for the county to issue a check out. So this 21 days involves the legal process that has to be put forth for us to actually cut a check back out. But 21 days is our target once a complete application is received.
Thank you, Director. Question for Dr. Davis. Is hydrogen sulfide considered a carcinogen?
No, hydrogen sulfide has not been classified as a carcinogen. And I would encourage people to also look on the website, the county emergency website, at the tox FAQs, which answers a lot of common questions related to the health impacts of hydrogen sulfide. But at this point, it has not been classified as a carcinogen.
Thank you. And a question for Director Pastrella, and this has come in a few different ways. So the question is, even though the odor isn't as strong or evident all the time, what is actually being done or what will be done to eliminate the odor permanently so that this never happens again?
Okay, so the odors that emanate from Dominguez Channel are, in fact, most of the time in our experience, a natural occurring phenomenon, as I described previously, this natural occurring anaerobic digestion and decay of the vegetation within the channel. So we wouldn't expect that there will ever be a time when it's always, there will be times when it's zero, when we're not having that decay, but there will be other times when it will be elevated to some extent and you may smell it. The difference between that condition and what we're going through now is we have a large body of water, larger than we've ever experienced, that is undergoing that anaerobic digestion, and it's actually become a chemical compound, if you will, that we're treating. The reasons for that I described earlier have to do with the introduction of some kind of foreign chemical within the water body. We've identified those chemicals that are interacting, and so this incident will come to an end. This incident will come to an end. And as you can see from the graphics, we're showing great results in reducing the hydrogen sulfide at times to zero and sometimes into non-detect. What we're working towards is getting it below a level that has any that the health officer is comfortable with, and eventually saying it's safe for everyone to return home, and that the nuisance has been abated.
Thank you, Director. And another question for you. Are there still plans to dredge the channel? And if so, how soon would this start?
No, we have no plans at this time to actually dredge the channel. Dredging is an interesting term that we need to be very careful about. We're currently pumping water from the channel, but we're not actually removing sediments at the base of the channel at this time. So there's no immediate plans to actually grade or pull mud, if you will, out of the channel. There is a current process, again, to move the liquid portion in the channel and pumping it to County Sanitation District for treatment. That's a slow process. There could be, as part of the restoration of this area, a proposal to dredge a portion of the materials in the channel, but that's a long-term project that we have not determined is the appropriate approach yet. We need to go through the analytics of that. We need to go through a community input and go through our regulatory agencies for that, what would be ultimately a restoration project, including removal of some of the sediment in the channel.
Thank you, Director. And this may be a question for AQMD. I'm going to pose it, and maybe Dr. Davis, you'll be able to chime in as well. Why is the odor more noticeable in the evening through the early morning, and why is it not constant?
So there's several factors in play in terms of usually at night, the meteorology is a little bit more stagnant, meaning that the winds are calmer. So it has a chance to kind of pool the hydrogen sulfide over the body of water, and any light wind would then blow that kind of pooled hydrogen sulfide to the nearby regions. And then, you know, it just depends in terms of it kind of goes counterintuitive because sometimes the anaerobic bacteria activity may also have some different types of seasonality. I think that's why some light treatment was being used by Department of Public Works. But I can go ahead and pass it to either Director Pastrella or Dr. Davis with regards to that as well to provide additional comments.
Any takers, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Pastrella?
Some of our observations include, as we're monitoring the effect of a lower water column, that meaning the tide being lower. So the volume of water within, or the water surface elevation above the mud, it's the water actually, or the liquid portion of this actually causes like a vapor barrier. And so the deeper the water, if you will, it will slow down water. So what we've noticed is, and we've been having some extreme tides, we've been noticing at lower tide that we do have some, at times have a uptick, at least in the monitoring station near the channel at 213 in Chico. So I know I wanted to also mention that that is one of the other reasons we're seeing off-gassing at a higher concentration during that period.
Thank you, Director. And a follow-up question for you. And it's a little bit lengthy, so please bear with me. For almost 6 weeks, almost all the attention has been on hydrogen sulfide and its odor. We've been told repeatedly that it's coming from decaying vegetation in the channel. However, hazmat workers and other workers around the channel have said that there's nothing living, no living vegetation in the channel, and it's been that way for weeks. Can you speak to that and this continued increase or continued release of hydrogen sulfide, and what's the underlying cause?
Sure. So what we have in the channel is what you wouldn't recognize as vegetation because it's broken down to the point that it's just kind of an inky material. If you've gone there and looked at it, which I don't recommend anyone get near the channel because it is a restricted area, but you know, you see this black sort of soot. That is the organic vegetation broken down and decaying itself, and it's gotten into like a particle size. So there's that component. There's also sulfates available to be converted to hydrogen sulfide from the ocean. There's a tremendous amount of, the seawater is a very good sort of sulfates. So that comes into the mix. And then within the organic materials in the mud at the bottom, there's also chemicals that could be interacting, creating what we now call a chemical oxygen demand. So as these chemical conversions are occurring, we're getting a huge demand for oxygen to the oxygen attaching itself to other chemical components. And so that process is sort of ongoing. And if you look at it, yes, if you talk to a layperson or someone there and ask, is there any vegetation? If you asking them, do you see any trees or do you see any shrub or reeds or anything that you would see in this aquatic environment, they're going to say no because it's all been decayed and dropped. It's actually underwater and it's broken into black sooty material at this point. But it's still organic and it's still a food source for the bacteria.
Thank you, Director. And just a quick time check. We're coming into our last 5 or 6 minutes. A question for Dr. Lowe. Why has South Coast AQMD not posted its handheld monitoring readings, the Jerome analyzer readings, on their odor event page? And can they commit to more regular testing?
So we have a lot of the monitors there, doing the monitoring 24/7, including the 213th and Chico, which would represent some of the highest levels that we'd expect to be in the area. I will look into the drone measurements themselves. I thought on the website we had some of our initial drone meter readings along with our mobile measurements, along with our lab samples. So there is a lot of data that is on the website, and I just got confirmation that we do have the handheld drone measurements on our website. So if you do go to our website, www.aqmd.gov, we have a Carson splash page that you can click on immediately, and all of that data is available on the website. Thank you. You're on mute.
Quick sound check. You can hear me, yes? Thank you. Director Pastrella, question for you. Will the hotel stays be extended? If so, for how long?
The relocation, reimbursement, and stays will be extended as long as the incident is in place. As long as we have our health officer, showing that this nuisance is in place and it's still affecting the human health, we will continue to have the option for relocation. So you may see posted on the website or something that give a specific date. That's more of just a mechanical date we're posting. We're having to reserve, for instance, hotel rooms ourselves and negotiate with hotels. And so we have that date there as we make those negotiations with the hotel rooms to keep them available to you, the residents that are seeking relocation.
Thank you. And Director Pastrella, what role will the Regional Water Quality Control Board play in any investigations or any work within the channel going forward?
So the Regional Water Quality Control Board, it plays a regulatory role, and they have an enforcement arm. Their enforcement arm has already been in contact with us, looking at not only what's within our channel, the channel section, but also upstream for any indicators of illicit discharge. I know this because they've already issued requests for information, and we've been working side by side with them from the beginning of the incident.
Thank you. And here are our final two questions. The first one for Dr. Davis. It's been repeatedly said that hydrogen sulfide would not have long-term effects. What confidence can we have in that it won't have long-term effects? And that the cause is not damaging?
So we look at studies and analyses and extrapolations used by EPA and other hazardous materials entities that are used to dealing with this stuff. And just to note, effects from hydrogen sulfide depend on two things. One, the level, meaning how high, and also the duration, how long. In this situation, most of the readings that we're talking about that tend to cause permanent or irreversible health effects are constant readings. So as an example, if you were to experience 40,000 parts per billion consistently over 10 minutes, then that may cause problems. If you were to experience 17,000 parts per billion continuously for 8 hours, that may be a risk for permanent or irreversible health effects. When we look at this incidence, we had a peak at about 7,000. That was not common. During the day, levels were much lower, so we didn't have consistent readings in that way. It fluctuated a lot, which means that people were not exposed to consistently high levels or continuously high levels throughout this incident thus far. But as I said, we continue to work with our state partners to continue to analyze and reassess based on all of the measurements that have been taken and the duration of the incident with the levels together to reassess, whether or not there's any risk for that. At this point, that's not what we expect based on the fluctuations and the levels that we've seen throughout this incident.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And the final question for Director Pastrella. Can you explain why the channel is only being monitored for hydrogen sulfide? Are there any additional measures being taken to detect other toxins or chemicals that may be existing in the channel?
Well, we are very aware of the channel's makeup, and we monitor this, and there's been a lot of water quality data through the years, dating all the way back to the date of the construction of the channel. In fact, historically, the channel was used as a combined sewer and storm drain, unfortunately, and there are legacy pollutants deep in the sediment here from those days. They're encapsulated in the mud. In the water itself, one of the interesting things residents should know over the years, over past, like say past 10 years, what's sort of a shame about the whole incident is the water quality in this channel has consistently gotten better and better over time. And we were quite proud actually of what we had seen and had been able to done by just reducing the number of those discharging as well as what they're discharging into our channel, into your channel. We know it's well documented what pollutants of concern exist in this water body and the other water bodies throughout LA County. All of the water bodies in LA County have some level of impairment. It's been documented. And someone brought up the Regional Water Quality Control Board. The State Water Quality Control Board and the Regional Water Quality Control Board have been working with the County of Los Angeles for many, many years now to improve the water quality of the Los Angeles County waterways. Dominguez Channel is one of those. So it's an ongoing effort. There's been lots of money spent and lots of efforts throughout LA County to reduce those impairments. This is an example, again, of where something has impaired the water body significantly, and we're researching to find out what that something was. And we look to solve that by not having that occur in the future and bring the health of the water body at least back to what it was prior to this incident.
Thank you, Director, and thank you all for your extra time tonight. I know that you're all dedicated to leading your teams and to bring relief to the affected communities. We do appreciate your time. And I want to thank all of our viewers tonight for attending tonight's town hall. As a reminder, the incident website, which will be brought up on your screen in just a moment, is updated regularly with the latest information, including FAQs that would include information that was presented this evening. There's also guidance from public health in both English and Spanish, and recordings of the town hall in English, Spanish, Mandarin, and Korean. You can also follow the efforts of the response team on social media at #Dominguez Channel. Thank you all. Be safe and be well.